welcome to Global Morning.
Death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle, the ASU strike.
Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a life. The president never gave me any deadline.
Hello and welcome everyone to Global Morning. This is Global Television. I am Wiyak Mofwebe saying a big thank you to you for joining us on the program. Today feels great, midweek already. So one first half of the week is virtually behind us, and then we're working towards the last part of it. So be grateful for the life that you have. Let's not be distracted by the things we wish we had while ignoring those that we've been blessed with, including this great nation, Nigeria. Yes, the Jagba syndrome is an entirely different conversation in itself, right? But at least you do have a country right now, okay? Yes, for those who want to Jagba, they have the right to, but there must be a bunch of people who are resolved to say, look, we must do X, Y, Z to ensure that we're also playing our part. It's about playing your part, all right? Hold it down in your little corner, do your beats, contribute your quota, and then you find people who do that in different spheres, and then Nigeria becomes far better for it. They say each one teach one. So I do my part, you do your part, and then I give you a hand here, you give me a hand there. And then we'll lift this country from where it is today. Yes, politicians and politics can be a bit of a distraction most of the times, especially when you find this sort of hula balu around partisanship, a group of people moving from one party to another for whatever reason, and it can be disillusioning for many people because first of all, it's reduces the ability to focus. It puts a question mark on the direction in which the country is headed, because this is not happening at the leadership level, all right? So it's very concerning. But you see, we've been blessed with life. Is the biggest gift that we have, for whatever it's worth. Let's be grateful for that. All right, it's Global Morning. We're just going to walk you through big issues today. Conversations are lined up already. Of course, we will also take a look at the papers for you. Every paper I've seen this morning is brimming with headlines around coalition, whether parties, political parties, that is, should build a coalition, whether the APC has an edge, whether President Bola Tinubu is going to stand for re-election in 2027, what are his chances, and so on and so forth. And the conversation is just getting rife with each day that passes. All right, but you see, beyond politics and all of the drama currently unfolding in that space, we must focus on governance, right? How are we leading this country today? Those who have been saddled with the privilege, yes, it is a privilege to serve, no matter the motive, all right, behind it, no matter what the motivation was from the start. It is a privilege to serve. Those who have now been bequeathed this privilege, question is, how are they delivering in that regard? For example, the president, all the 36 state governors, the minister of the FCT, those are the grassroots level, local government chairmen, the ward councillors. How are they delivering the goods to the people? And then you also talk about those who have been appointed. I mean, no less a privilege as well, because whether you like it or not, they serve, or are expected to serve the people. We want to talk about all that. We also want to look at World War II. Yes, today is the 80th anniversary, if you like, commemoration of that world-changing event, because whether you like it or not, most of the things we're seeing today across the world, I mean, end to end on earth, were informed and have been shaped over time by the events that surround World War II. All right, World War II abolished the League of Nations that had been there for a while, then introduced the United Nations, which again came on board in 1945. So it's already 80 years. We're going to be talking to you about all of those issues, including conversations from the United Nations headquarters in New York, led by the UN Secretary General, Dr. Antonio Guterres. So we'll have a portfolio of conversations in this regard. But for this morning on our show here on Global Television, we'll be focusing on the timeline, right? What has happened the last 80 years? What lessons ought us to learn from the events of World War II? What were even the factors that led to World War II in the first place? In what specific ways did that war reshape the world, and has it informed any developments since that time? So we'll talk about Germany, for example. Hitler is big in this conversation, no doubt about that. We'll talk about Europe as a whole, and then see how all of these events have influenced this continent of Africa one way or another. So we are going to have that conversation with you today. We can boast upfront that we have somebody with so much of experience under his belt to discuss these issues and see what lessons we can glean from World War II going forward. Because there are people who are now saying, look, from the way the entire world is going with all of this talk about change in world order, all thanks to President Donald Trump and all of that, right? There's likely going to be a third world war. But we also see on the flip side people who say, look, for X, Y, Z reasons, the odds of a third world war are very, very minimal. But whatever it is, we'll have that conversation on the program today. Of course, as expected, we'll take a look at the papers for you. Several headlines, like I mentioned already, but there's a second conversation. We'll take a quick break now, everyone. When we return, so much to talk about on the program today. All right, so we're going to talk about something else in addition to the World War II issues. We'll look at, well, domestic issues, right? State of the nation. Where are we today in Nigeria? It turns out that you almost cannot, as it were, divorce politics from policies, whether it's formulation, ideation, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and what have you. So there is that fusion, if you like, right, that does exist between policies and politics. So we'll talk about the politics in Nigeria today, right? Politicians can pretend, play the ostrich, act as though they're living in denial, but as it stands today, we can't lie to ourselves any longer about 2027. Every politician who is still politically ambitious, including those who are not necessarily politically relevant anymore, are concerned about 2027. Political parties, the actors in these parties, their supporters, their sympathizers, they are all interested. In fact, some of them are already largely invested in 2027, right? So 2027 is a big conversation. In fact, for some governors now, 2027 is far more important than even the governors in their states. Of course, again, we can lie to ourselves about that. As a matter of fact, those governors whose elections follow the 4-yearly general election cycle are now more concerned about whether or not their re-election is guaranteed in 2027, as against paying attention to critical issues around development, around good governance, delivering the dividends of democracy, as we call them, to the people that elected them, or the people they are in office to serve, and all of that. So that's a big conversation in itself. And for this morning in particular, suffice to say that we want to take off from Rivers State, because Rivers State has been in the news for a while, for all the wrong reasons, sadly so. Now, the good people of that state, when you talk to them, they tell you that whatever is happening in Rivers State today is not what they would even wish on their enemy. They have been accusations and counter accusations as to who is wrong, who is not wrong. Of course, there's enough blame to go around. In fact, in the case of Rivers State, you have a bunch of people who have blamed the president for declaring state of emergency in the state. In fact, they extend that blame to the National Assembly, the Senate in particular, for the voice votes that eventually, quote unquote, endorsed the state of emergency that has now been declared in Rivers State. So much of importance was attached to it that the president had to give a live broadcast about it. So there are people who also say, well, if we want to bring in fairness and equity into this, because basically the grounds on which the president had declared state of emergency in Rivers is to say that, well, the Supreme Court had ruled that there was no governance in the state. The governor, now suspended, Siminalayi Fubara, had presented the budgetary proposal of the state for the 2025 fiscal year to a 4-member house. Well, some people say 3-member house, which of course is an aberration in the eye of the Constitution. But there are those who also say that, hold on a second. If on that basis we're declaring state of emergency in a place like Rivers, why don't you extend it to Zamfara, for example, or to other states up north where you have crises here and there and so on and so forth? But there are those who believe that, well, they are not the same scenario, so let's call a spade a spade. But we'll talk about that spade in the course of the program today. However, before we get to that point, it is only, no-brainer that we establish that as it stands today in Rivers State, there's political crisis, whether we like it or not. Of course, the sole administrator in that state is in the eye of the storm. He has been in the eye of the storm right from day one. Of course, he has been invited by the National Assembly. He missed the appointment the first day. He showed up the next day. He apologized for it, gave reasons he couldn't come as scheduled, and the drama just continues. For starters, the president made very clear that this suspension is for an initial period of 6 months. There are those who say that, look, the president is at liberty to extend it beyond 6 months, depending on what circumstances play out going forward. But of course, the president did a bit of globe-trotting recently. He was in France at a point, and then he was in London at another point. There are feelers saying that the president did have a meeting with the suspended governor of Rivers State, Mr. Fubara. And there are people, even within the fold of the APC, those who are within the presidency, saying that, look, from the way it's going, well, Mr. Fubara is ready to shift ground. So, who knows? He will be reinstated sooner than we had thought initially, because there's concession going on, there's still deliberation, there's still negotiations, there are negotiations going on. The back and forth has not ended. However, things are looking up. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. So the man just might be reinstated earlier than we had expected before now. But whatever that may be, how do all these happenings, these events, shape our democracy? Because whether you like it or not, what has happened in Rivers State now, even if Governor Fubara were to be reinstated this minute, will go a long way in shaping not just the politics of Rivers, but of Nigeria. Because people are always going to have a reason, right or wrong, to cycle back to these events and use them as a benchmark. Is that a good place to be? Well, we'll discuss all of those in the course of having a conversation about state of the nation this morning on the program. Let's take a quick break, everyone. When we return, we'll walk you through the papers. All right, we'll begin our, analysis of the papers this morning with all the headlines taken off from the Guardian newspaper. All right, quite a big one here on the Guardian newspaper. One with a bit of, if you like, public interest element here. Says, Nine Mobile at crossroads, seek $63 billion lifeline has 10.3 million subscribers. Port. He's talking about a company, a mobile company that used to be known as Etisalat. Management changed some years ago. There was a bit of rebranding that happened there, and today it's called Nine Mobile. We hear now that over 10 million of its subscribers are ported, and now the company needs $3 billion in lifeline to be able to get back on track. Well, we wait to see how that unfolds. Let's just look at a few more headlines for you on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. NFIU identifies betting, fintechs, others as enablers of kidnapping. Now we're getting to the root of the issue, the technicalities of the issue. We understand that the National Assembly is also having a bit of a tussle with telecoms operators in the country right now, because they say that, look, you're not doing your part. These kidnappers, they use phones, they use internet service, and they use your platforms to communicate with families and loved ones of their victims. So how is it that we're not getting feedback, we're not getting access to some very vital information to help us track them down? But I'm sure this doesn't have to be a tussle or some sort of a supremacy battle. It just has to be a matter of collaboration, all right? The security agencies need to have a sit down. I mean, of what use is intelligence? In any case, what do we even call intelligence? Where you can have a defense sector, all right, security architecture in a country like Nigeria that can sit down with telcos, I mean telecoms operators, to say, look, we understand that one of the drivers, so to speak, of kidnapping, all sorts of crimes, especially with sophistication, all right, is technology. And we believe very strongly, given what we have seen, the pattern, the trajectory, what have you, that we can collaborate, all right? We can source information. In this same nation, for example, we had seen more than a decade ago where a judge, a serving judge, all right, had his phone log requested from a telecoms operator, and it was provided. It was even admitted as evidence in courts. I mean, think about that for a second. So well over a decade later, are we saying we can't do better? Are we saying we just want to keep pretending about these things? If someone is kidnapped anywhere in the country, whether up north, somewhere down south, all right, and the kidnappers are calling their parents, their children, their loved ones to say, look, we need XYZ amount of money as a ransom before we let this person off. The question is, what mobile service did they use? Whether it was cellular call, what we call the normal GSM call, or it was OTT call, or they call over the top call, maybe through WhatsApp or one of these apps, for example. These things can be tracked. I mean, they can be tracked. Well, in the case of WhatsApp, you hear that your chats and all of that, all right, are end-to-end encrypted. It was somebody that encrypted it. I'm sure security agencies can find a way around these things. It's just collaboration we need. It's just patriotism we need. It's just to understand that what we are talking about here are real lives, real human beings. These are not numbers. These are not just a piece of statistics. All right, but again, this is not about infighting or trying to outdo each other. It has to be about synergy going forward. All right. So we hope that the NFIU is able to not only identify betting, fintechs, others as fuelers or drivers of kidnapping, but should also be able to leverage this piece of information to do better, improve on outcomes. All right. Despite 40 trillion naira investments in 11 years, insecurity in Nigeria unacceptable. Again, this is closely tied to what I've just talked about, right? So, those are results. I mean, whatever it is we achieve in the fight against insurgency, kidnapping, all forms of crime, for example, commensurates with what we invest. 40 trillion naira in a country like Nigeria is no joke. I mean, think about our budget for the 2025 fiscal year. All right, just upwards of 40 trillion, less than 50 trillion. And now you're saying you'll spend 40 trillion. I mean, if that piece of statistic is anything to go by, in fighting crimes, all right, particularly insecurity of all kinds, then it means that we must have to tell ourselves some hard truths. Come back to the drawing board, as they say. Whatever we're going to draw, I'm not so sure, but we must have the courage and the will to tell ourselves the truth about where we are, because it takes a lot for a sitting governor, a serving governor, to come out in 2025 and tell you, look, we are overwhelmed. I mean, that's no comedy. It's a real life issue, and we must come at it with the same energy. My mom would say you need iron hand to deal with such issues, all right? But we're not done yet with our first paper this morning, which is the Guardian newspaper. Has quite a lot on the front page of it. There's a headline here with a picture of the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB here, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. It says FG's witness testifies behind closed doors as Kanu's terrorism trial begins. We're told that these witnesses, they are masked, well, for reasons we probably will find out later. But let's see another headline here with a picture of the President of the Senate. Let's see Godswill Akpabio. The kicker is Akpabio. Agbakoba demands Natasha's retraction of sexual harassment claims. Well, Senator Akpoti Uduaghan did a bit of sarcastic apology some 3 days ago. Whether or not she's going to retract these harassment claims, I'm not so sure, but let's see what that turns out to be like while we continue to look at headlines from across our dailies. We're staying still with the Guardian newspaper this morning. Oborevwori, the Delta State governor, that is Right Honorable Sheriff Oborevwori, has been in the news now since last weekend. With the events in Asaba, Delta State capital, of Monday, he's even now bigger in the news alongside his boss, in the manner of speaking, his predecessor, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. All right, this one tells us PDP to sue Oborevwori others as Okowa assures of Atiku's imminent decamp. Well, at this point, you're asking yourself, are we supposed to just sit back, grab a bottle of drink or a pack of popcorn, watch the drama unfold, laugh when we should, throw our legs off the table and things like that? Because it's interesting how that one part of your head is trying to understand how it is that an entire PDP leadership in Delta State, well, you may say in specific, not everybody in PDP Delta State are decamped, but the drivers of the party in the state have decamped. All right, so there's literally no PDP in Delta State as it stands right now, given the events in Asaba of Monday, right? So you're trying to understand all of that. How did it happen? What could have been the incentive to move a former senator on the platform of the PDP, Ifeanyi Okowa, a former two-time governor, 8 years in Delta State, former running mate, presidential running mate, that is, to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar in the 2023 presidential election, right? And in his own right, a leader of the party, yes, and then alongside him, a sitting governor, his successor, and then leaders of the party, including Senator James Manager, of course, who is more like a midwife in this regard, and then all, end to end, all the local government chairmen on the platform of the PDP in Delta State and several other leaders of that party. And they say that the major reason they had to leave the PDP for the APC is that they want to be able to, quote and unquote, connect Delta to Abuja. And you tell yourself, hold on a second, can we take a breather and understand what connect means in this context, all right? Because somebody asked a question yesterday and it was very straightforward. Okowa was senator for a while before he moved on to becoming the governor of the state. Of course, he did that for 8 years. Was Delta State connected at that time, or was it disconnected? At what point did it become important to connect Delta State to Abuja? So what if presidency moved to a different party tomorrow? Are we going to reconnect, disconnect, connect again? I mean, politicians should just help us find sense in all of this. That's for the Delta State thing. But Ifeanyi Okowa was on national television yesterday. He talked about a lot of things. I mean, you can go watch out the video on YouTube yourself. But here's what it is. He says, look, if you think my defection is big, if you think my defection is something to talk about, then you don't even know what's coming. My own, well, in a sense, principal, Atiku Abubakar, is moving to the PDP. I mean, he's leaving the PDP as well. Of course, it's not very clear where he's moving to, but from the body language, and if you were to read between the lines, he's also suggesting that Atiku Abubakar is likely going to move to the All Progressives Congress, the APC. The APC has been accused of, well, several things. Coercion, blackmail, manipulation, and what have you. The party has also come out to say, look, we are not coercing anybody. These are full-blown adults. These are leaders in their own rights. These are people who have established themselves in the politics of this country. These are people who have been in leadership for, I mean, since 1998, 1999 in Nigeria. So who is coercing who? They've been there long enough to know what choice they want to make, and they should be responsible for those choices and decisions. I mean, there's a lot of truth in that. But again, you can't divorce all of these events from 2027. So let's go ahead now and take a look at more headlines for you from the papers. Quickly before we wrap up this morning, Governor of Lagos State, Sanwo-Olu, is on the news. This one says Lagos empowers 1,700 entrepreneurs through micro support initiative. Still from the Guardian newspaper this morning, everyone. All right, Lagos empowers 1,700 entrepreneurs through micro support initiative from the Guardian newspaper. All right, what more do we have here? MBS expands CPI, unveils daily price movement data. All right, CPI here apparently is referring to Consumer Price Index. So it says that the National Bureau of Statistics, that is MBS, is expanding the CPI and unveiling daily price movement data. That's good. Let's see where the market is heading. Let's understand what the numbers are saying regarding consumer sentiments, and then we're able to also follow the money, as they say, right? Okay, CACO Presidential Aid Seek probe of illegal student loan deductions. It's too early to be having that conversation, but let's believe that we're starting early enough, and we are going to get it right at some point as well. Those are the headlines for you from The Guardian this morning. Do well to pick a copy, read up details, and then give yourself some advantage, all right, on the news front. Let's turn to The Nation newspaper. That's our next port of call this morning, The Nation newspaper. We will begin with the headlines above the name masts of The Nation newspaper. Again, Nnamdi Kanu's story is sort of replicated across national dailies this Wednesday. How Nnamdi Kanu was arrested in Lagos hotel by witness. All right, you can read it up. Let's see on what page now. On page 4 of The Nation newspaper. All right, what's more, lawmakers indict NCC telcos over kidnappings orders. Well, as it's normally the case, in the next couple of days, maybe before the week runs out, we are going to see invites being sent to the executive vice chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, and then, of course, to the heads of these telecoms companies by the National Assembly to come and say their side of the story as well. All right. Here it says Oyetola gives out 42,000 life jackets to facilitate waterway safety. Still from The Nation newspaper this morning. Agbakoba demands retraction of Natasha's allegations against Akpabio. All right. We wait to see what Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan's response to this will be. All right. Lagos Calabar Highway, foreign investors network seeks Tinubu's intervention over $250 million loss. All right. Okowa, Atiku's 2023 bid for president insensitive. Okowa, Atiku's 2023 bid for president insensitive. Two riders with the headline, I regret running with him. Okay. What's more, Tinubu deserves second term. I bear no grudge, says ex-VP. Well, this is some political basketballs, as it's called on the streets. Let's make progress real quick. We can't spend the whole time talking about defectors, all right? PDP to sue Delta governor, others, all right? What's the basis? What are the grounds? Well, maybe to say we gave the governor a mandate. He has to bring it back one way or another. But there's a headline on the foot of the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning. Court OK's playing of, let's see what that is, playing of disc in Emefiele's case. That's some electronic evidence there, apparently been admitted. EFCC detains Aisha Achimugu over alleged 8 billion naira deal. Read up those details on page 2 of the Nation newspaper this morning. All right. Let's turn to other papers for you now. Our next port of call is the Daily Trust newspaper. Let's turn to the Daily Trust newspaper for you and see what headlines we have from there. We'll begin with the star headline for you. Okowa's choice as running mate cost Atiku 2023 presidential election. That's Moro, a senator from Benue State, about Moro there talking. But you say politicians will always be politicians, all right? Well, we wait. 2027 is gradually unfolding. There's going to be a lot of talks like this, naturally. FBI others to release Tinubu probe reports Friday. Okay, that conversation has been a while coming, but there's a court order in that direction, even though presidency has waved it off with the left hand to say, look, there's no big deal there. I mean, there's nothing there that's going to be released we already haven't seen. Every other thing is in public domain, so there's nothing really spectacular. Friday is barely 48 hours away. Alleged money laundering at Chinugu to appear in court today. That looks like things are moving real fast because before now we were told she was off the shores of this country, but now we understand that once she touched down at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, she was picked up by operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and today we understand she would be arraigned in court. It's beginning to look like the U.S. justice system all of a sudden, right? But we'll make progress looking at the headlines from papers for you this morning. We trek for miles, Mina residents say, as curfew bites. Soldier to die by hanging for killing girlfriend. Global Television brought you that story yesterday. How dozens of civilian JTF died defending communities in Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, right? NNPCL appoints Idrisu Obioma, sacks Port Harcourt Refineries MD, 200 others. That looks like massive layoff there. All right, but find out details for yourself on page 6. If you pick up a copy of the Daily Trust today, which is what will lead us to the next paper, the Daily Independent. All right, let's go to the Daily Independent newspaper for you, and then we'll begin with the headlines above the nameplates of the Daily Independent. All right, it says in Nnamdi Kanu's trial, FG's witnesses testify behind screen. FG to inject 110 billion naira intervention fund into select medical schools. What are those schools? Is there a list of those schools? Well, find out when you read today's issue of the Daily Independent, page 7. All right, starts from the front page, continues on page 7, and then we'll bring you the star headline this morning. PDP vows to reclaim mandates from Governor Oborevwori others. The writer tells us, asks Ogidi-led committee to recover Delta structure, politicians and structure. Okay. Protects, defend judiciary, CGN challenges NBA. European Reconstruction Bank cites first West African office in Lagos. European Reconstruction Bank cites West African office in Lagos. Nigeria's diaspora remittances hit $19.5 billion. That is upwards of 30 trillion. Quite a lot, but let's see how this pans out. EFCC nabs e-money over abuse of the naira, dollar. I thought everyone was beginning to learn their lesson, but that doesn't seem to be the case now. First, it was Cubana chief priests. Before that, we had, the Mummy of Lagos, as it's popularly called. Now it is e-money. Well, let's see. Hopefully this goes beyond media trial as well. Agbakoba to Natasha, retract sexual harassment allegation against Akpabio. That headline again, that story is featured across newspapers today. Read up details from page 6 of the Daily Independent this morning. All right. Inflation, global trade disruptions weigh on Nigeria's growth. And then we take it down to the foot of the paper. How Nigeria can create prosperity that will last by Makinde. All right. You can read it as a masterclass on page 7 of the Daily Independent newspaper. All right. Let's make progress again as we turn to our penultimate paper this morning, the Blueprint newspaper, that has quite a number of stories, headlines on the front page of it. All right. We have invested 4.8 billion naira to empower 12,000 Lagos MSMEs. That's Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu is the one to whom that headline is credited. FCTA crushes 601 impounded motorcycles. Dangote Sugar grows turnover by 51% to provide 75,000 jobs. That's quite massive. And then we have a bit of sport on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper as well. Under 20 AFCON, CAF welcomes Flying Eagles to Egypt, ready for Tunisia. Excuse me. And then by the corner, that's left side corner of the Blueprint newspaper, Atiku will soon defect, says Okowa, as PDP heads to courts. Nigeria loses 118 billion naira to gas flaring in 2 months. That's quite a lot of money to lose. UTME 2025, JAMB arrests 40 candidates over malpractices. Police arrest 33 suspected thugs in Kano. Boko Haram kills 14 mourners in Chibok, church houses torched. Quite a sad event that took place yesterday, or at least the news came through yesterday, right? The last headline we have from the Blueprint newspaper this morning, FG's witness testifies in camera as Kano's terrorism trial commences. And that takes us to our last paper this morning, which is the Daily Sun newspaper. There's a headline just adjacent the nameplate of the Daily Sun newspaper. It says, Governor Okpebholo declares war on kidnappers, cultists. My guest talked about this in passing yesterday. Commences demolition of properties linked to perpetrators, sponsors. All right. Hardship, Cardinal Arinze blasts politicians. And then that brings us to the star headline on the front page of the Daily Sun newspaper. Atiku will defect soon, Okowa. 2 riders with that headline. Expresses regrets running with ex-VP in 2023 presidential election. Tackles Saraki over criticism of joining APC. Nigeria facing existential crisis, El Rufai warns. At what point did the former Kaduna State governor realize that we're facing existential crisis in this country? Well, I think 2027 has a way of kicking some facts and realities into our minds, and that's working with the former FCT minister right now. Okay, but that headline has a rider, by the way, says country's future hangs in balance. Hopefully, he also finds balance in the SDP. Ayoku Umba genuinely, quietly transforming Enugu. Ex-Commonwealth Secretary General Uwanchukwu renew call for new constitution. Is anybody listening to that call at all? Well, I've discussed that with my guests time and again. It will appear that we have to make do with what we have right now as we continue to patch the constitution in the name of continuous amendments, right? What more do we have this morning from the Daily Sun newspaper? Bottom right, the very bottom, the foot of the front page, right end of it. It says, EFCC speaks on e-money's arrest, says more high-profile arrests to follow. The writer says, Commission grills Achimugu, and we've been told that the lady will be arraigned in court this morning. Again, those are the papers that we have for you today. Do well. I mean, half a dozen of them were brought to you this morning. Do well to pick copies for yourself, read up details, stay ahead of the news. I mean, that's one way really to fight off fake news and all of the misinformation we have going on around us, so that you don't continue to rely on unauthorized sources, fake, unreliable, unconfirmed stories, and then make wrong decisions. But we also need to establish that Global Television has no editorial latitude over these headlines. All we do for you here on the program is to bring you the headlines without any contribution one way or another from Global Television, and we're grateful to the publishers of these papers. We're taking a quick break. A lot to talk about this morning, but at top of the hour, we will bring you the Global AM News. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues.
And at the same time, keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
students exchange scheme, which essentially means that Nigeria has had this agreement with a couple of countries, all right, including Russia, for example, countries like Hungary, well, you have Algeria, you have Morocco, and they have even Venezuela, for instance, where we're able to send scholars from Nigeria. I mean, the scholarship board of the federal government sends scholars abroad for training, handing them some cash to cover a few things like, say, health insurance, and then things like medicals, supplies, essential supplies like food, and all of those things that you just need to keep body and soul together, as we say. But that again has been challenged for the most part, even though host countries have a responsibility of covering tuition and housing for these scholars. For one time, for an entire year, we saw how young Nigerians were stranded abroad because the Nigerian authorities had failed to send them money to cover these essentials. In fact, so bad was the situation that the Minister of Education at that time was summoned by the National Assembly. But now, the leadership of the Ministry of Education, the Federal Ministry of Education, that is, in Nigeria, under the leadership of Dr. Tunji Alausa, is now saying that, look, let's not lie to ourselves. We can't continue this scheme. Let's focus more on indigenous scholarships to drive especially tertiary education. So that's where we are right now. So the question is, what is Nigeria going to be missing with this new direction? Are we trying to cut costs, all right, while becoming penny wise, pound foolish? Because somebody said, yes, while on the one hand it's natural and it's normal to think about the cost of doing something, who else is ready to think about the costs of not doing it? It's like you saying you do not want to send your child to school because education is expensive. But the question is, what are your alternatives? Apprenticeship? What exactly are your alternatives? All right. What else can that child do that will help them build skills, all right, build capacity, develop themselves to be useful to society now and in future? We must look at all of this. So there's always the cost of not doing it, even though we know by default everybody's concerned about the cost of doing it. Well, let's not stretch this beyond this point. We're taking a break now. At top of the hour, we'll bring you the Global AM News. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues,
and at the same time keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
Hello and welcome to all of our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to the Global AM News here on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I'm Uyag Mofegwe, reminding our viewers that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTimes 276. You can download the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices to keep track of our 247 broadcast. President Bola Tinubu has approved the redeployment of 4 federal permanent secretaries as part of ongoing efforts to strengthen the operations of the Federal Civil Service and enhance service delivery. A statement issued by the Director of Information and Public Relations, Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Eno Olotu, explained that the move aligns with Tinubu's reform agenda and is aimed at boosting operational efficiency and innovation across ministries, noting that the reassignment is part of continuous efforts to enhance operational efficiency, foster innovation, and strengthen service delivery across the service. The federal government has announced that it is seeking investments of 1.5 trillion naira in the country's medical education within the next 5 years. Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa, stated this in Abuja during the inauguration of the Ministerial Committee on TED Fund High Impact Intervention Project for medical schools rehabilitation across the 6 geopolitical zones. This is as it has allocated over 110 billion naira to public universities to boost enrollments into medicine and surgery, pharmacy, dentistry, and nursing programs. Vice President Kashif Shettima has officially received Delta State Governor Sheriff Oboriwori, former Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, and other PDP defectors at the cenotaph in Asaba, Delta State capital, with National Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Umar Ganduje, stating that more governors will join the ruling party. The storm had long speculated that the dramatic defection of PDP's former vice presidential candidate, Okowa, Governor Oboriwori, and the entire PDP party structure in the state, one of the former ruling party strongholds, Delta Deputy Governor Monday Oyeme, state commissioners and local government chairmen, and the state's grassroots machinery all moved en bloc to the ruling party. Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, has pledged the ministry's commitment to supporting Nigerian women and other vulnerable groups in society. This is coming on the heels of the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development celebrating its 30th year anniversary and the signing of a memorandum of understanding with development partner Women at Risk International Foundation in Abuja. Our correspondent, Godwin Sunday, completes the report.
In order to strengthen support for sexual-based violence survivors, the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development has signed a strategic partnership agreement with Women at Risk International Foundation, WARIF. The partnership demonstrates the ministry's commitment to advancing women's rights and addressing social challenges. Speaking during the signing ceremony, the minister Imam Sulaiman Ibrahim spoke on the significance of the MOU towards strengthening Nigerians' response to sexual-based violence, SGBV.
Today marks more than just the signing of a document, but a significant milestone in our shared journey towards strengthening Nigerians' response to sexual and gender-based violence. It marks our collective commitment to ensuring that survivors of sexual violence are
in partnership with WARIF. It is clear that Nigeria will definitely win the war against SGBV and other sexual violence that young people, especially women, are experiencing in the country. My name is Godwin Sunday.
Oh, thank you, Godwin. Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dr. Dele Alake, has pledged unwavering support for the newly established Department of Gemology and Gemstones at Yakubu Gowon University in Abuja. The initiative, the first of its kind in Africa, aligns with the minister's strategic vision for enhanced capacity building within Nigeria's mining sector. Sharon Ajay has details.
Hosting a delegation from the department led by Professor Adesoji Adesogba, Dr. Alake described the new department as a vital hub of knowledge for professionals in the gemstone and jewelry-making value chain, emphasizing that the initiative will strengthen Nigerians' mining industry by cultivating a new generation of experts equipped to drive sectoral growth.
Institute, the Jewelry Institute under the ministry in Abuja to be affiliated to the Yakubu Gowon University, I think is just quite relevant and will provide a great deal, or not just provide, but will complement the work of the university and the Department of Gemology and Geology. And it also really is gratifying to me because it's like it's synchronizing with our own objectives, our own vision for the development of this sector. But the idea is that those that we send there to train should come here and be trainers. Yes. Right? But now that we have even the training institute in the university, it gives fillip to our efforts and to the capacity enhancement of the sector.
In his remarks, Professor Adesoji Adesogba praised the minister's ongoing reforms, noting that they have significantly repositioned the sector for sustainable growth. He appealed for ministerial support in securing formal affiliation between the university and the Gemological Institute of Nigeria and pledged the department's commitment to supporting the ministry's goals, particularly in enhancing mining contribution to Nigerians' GDP. The minister further pledged full backing for the proposed affiliation and called on other institutions to follow Yakubu Gowon University's lead in incorporating mining-focused courses. Sharon Ajay reporting for Global TV News.
Minister of Education Dr. Maruf Tunji Alausa has stressed the need for tertiary institutions to embrace modern practice in the educational sector. The minister stated this in Abuja at the inauguration of the Ministerial Monitoring Committee on TED Fund High Impact Intervention Project for Medical School Rehabilitation. Our correspondent Ramsey Enokagbo reports.
The Minister of Education, Dr. Maruf Tunji Alausa, says the committee will be charged with ensuring that the funds allocated to the rehabilitation of the medical schools are used effectively and efficiently. He also emphasized the need for tertiary institutions in Nigeria to produce more medical practitioners to reduce the impact of the Japa syndrome.
When we came in as a government, we were admitting just about 5,000 medical students into a medical school. We moved quickly to double that number. Even at doubling to 10,000, we're still a long way. Long way. Today we have deficit of 30,000 doctors in the country. So if you're training this, just admitting 10,000, no, we have deficit of almost 300,000 doctors or so, 300,000, yeah. So just building physical structure alone will not cut it. And that's why we're investing in simulation labs that can give us expansive ability to train more medical students.
The Minister of State for Education, Dr. Suwaiba Ahmad, in her address described the state of medical education infrastructure worrisome in recent years and appealed for well-equipped medical schools to ensure that doctors, nurses and healthcare workers are trained to deliver quality care to the people.
The TED Fund High Impact Project for Medical School Rehabilitation is one of the government's key initiatives to foster excellence in medical education, enhance the quality of healthcare training, and equip our future doctors and healthcare professionals with the skills and facilities necessary to meet the demands of ever-evolving medical landscape. As we are all aware, the state of medical education infrastructure has faced many challenges in recent years, And it is no secret that a well-equipped medical school is fundamental to ensuring that our doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers are trained to deliver quality care to our people.
The Executive Secretary of TED Fund, Sonny Echono, expressed appreciation to Mr. President and Minister of Education for the vision and commitment to the fund's intervention activities, particularly the strengthening and repositioning of the nation's health institutions, especially intervention in medical schools for the year 2025.
There is absolutely no doubt that intervention will go a long way in solving some of the challenges facing the health sector in the country. The provision of critical manpower in the health sector remains a huge challenge and is often exacerbated by the Japa syndrome. The problems of insufficient and unqualified medical personnel leading to high doctor-patient ratio and all the other indices that we are not very proud of have lingered for far too long. The challenges of ill-equipped medical facilities have also persisted. It is for these reasons that intervention is considered not only important but also timely.
There is absolutely no doubt that the intervention will go a long way in solving some of the challenges facing the health sector in the country. Ramsey Enoch Agbo reporting for Global Television.
Thank you so very much, Ramsey, for your reporting. The Nigerian Technical Aid Corps, NTAC, says it is deploying 35 medical professionals to Zanzibar, Tanzania, to bridge both the educational and professional gaps in that country. Dr. Yusuf Yakub, Director General of NTAC, speaking at the deployment of the professionals comprising nurses and doctors, said in Abuja that the exercise is in line with the mandate of the agency to send volunteers to African, Caribbean, and Pacific ACP countries in need of professionals, noting that it's a historic day for the Corps and to honor the directive of President Bola Tinubu. The federal government of Nigeria has signed a multilateral memorandum of understanding with the United Kingdom to combat the menace of cybercrimes in the two countries. The MOU signing ceremony took place in Abuja. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, signed on behalf of the federal government, while Minister of State Home Affairs, Lord David Hanson, signed for the United Kingdom. The program also featured the launch of the Joint Case Team on Cybercrime by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation in response to the need for a coordinated and robust approach to fighting cybercrimes as contemplated in the Cybercrimes Prohibition Prevention Act 2015 as amended. A General Court Martial sitting at the headquarters 82 Division Nigerian Army in Enugu has sentenced a soldier, Private Adamu Mohammed, to death by hanging and another Private Abubakar Yusuf to 10 years imprisonment. A statement by Lieutenant Colonel Jonah Unwakalu, Acting Deputy Director, 82 Division Army Public Relations, said the sentences were handed down after due consideration for the offenses of murder and robbery for which the soldiers stood trial. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has arrested prominent business executive Aisha Suleiman Achimugu at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. According to a statement from the commission, Achimugu was apprehended around 5 a.m. upon her voluntary arrival from London. The arrest is linked to an ongoing EFCC investigation into alleged criminal conspiracy and money laundering. Following intensified operations against criminal gangs backed by credible sources, the Nigerian police has successfully arrested 22 suspected kidnappers and gun runners and recovered several arms ammunition across several states. False Public Relations Officer ACP Muyiwa Adejobi said the arrests demonstrate the commitment of the force at ensuring the safety and security of all citizens. Severe gully erosion has destroyed at least 15 houses and large suites of farmland in Ekulumili a community in Nnewi South local government area in Anambra State. Residents are appealing to the state government for urgent intervention to prevent further devastation. The erosion, which has also cut off several major roads, poses a significant threat to livelihoods and safety of the people. Let's turn to Nigeria's northeast, where Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum has disclosed that the state has reintegrated no fewer than 300,000 repentant Boko Haram terrorists over the past 3 years. Governor Zulum made the revelation while receiving Minister of Defense Badiru Abubakar, Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa, and other top military commanders during their visit to Maiduguri, the state capital. While acknowledging the efforts of the Nigerian military, the governor noted that several challenges continue to hamper the effective fight against terrorism and called for urgent interventions. This is Global Television. You are on to the live broadcast of the Global AM News. When the news returns shortly, Carney celebrates victory, addresses Trump threats over Canadian election victory. Details of this coming shortly, plus business and sports stories on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. The second part of this news broadcast returns with business. The Rural Electrification Agency, REA, has signed grant agreements with 9 renewable energy companies to provide electricity access to 17.5 million Nigerians. This appears to be the first collaboration under the World Bank-funded Distributed Access through Renewable Energy Scale-Up, DARES, project following its official launch in 2024. The managing director of the agency, Abba Aliyu, who spoke at the signing ceremony in Abuja, noted that the project is aimed at electrifying 17.5 million homes by deploying 1,350 mini-grids. The Federal Inland Revenue Service has inaugurated the National E-Invoicing Solution Interagency Steering Committee as part of its efforts at boosting tax compliance, transparency, and efficiency in Nigeria's tax system. This was according to a statement shared on the service's official X handle. The service also noted that the initiative demonstrates its commitment to leveraging technology and partnerships in its mission at reforming the country's tax administration landscape. U.S. media has reported that U.S. President Donald Trump has agreed to soften the impact of tariffs on automakers that have been hit by multiple levies. The move comes ahead of a Trump rally planned for Tuesday night near Detroit to mark the president's first 100 days in office. The shift means companies paying 25% tariffs on car imports won't also pay other duties, such as those on steel and aluminum. And now let's go further into the foreign scene. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has delivered his victory speech to supporters after winning Canada's election, leading his Liberal Party to a new term in power after convincing voters that his experience managing crises had prepared him to confront U.S. President Donald Trump.
We will need to think big and act bigger.
Prime Minister Carney addresses his crowd of supporters, establishing what is potentially the grand objective of his policy focus. The Donald Trump factor, in part, had shaped the campaign and continues to matter beyond Canada's election.
When I sit down with President Trump, it will be to discuss the future economic and security relationship between two sovereign nations. And it will be with our full knowledge that we have many, many other options than the United States to build prosperity for all Canadians.
Prime Minister Carney setting the agenda before a crowd of supporters following his election victory, noting that Canada has a long way to go, calling the vote the most consequential election, having defeated Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Uyi Agmofwebe reporting for. Let's go further. Now, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has welcomed Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at Villa Doria Pamphili in Rome as the two Mediterranean countries seek to boost trade and cooperation. Hassan Kabir completes the report.
Meloni welcomed Erdogan with a ceremony at the Villa Palm Hill residence in Rome before the two leaders went on to have a one-on-one meeting. Erdogan and Meloni will attend the 4th Intergovernmental Summit between Turkey and Italy, which is expected to focus on the steps to enhance cooperation along with discussion on current regional and global issues. Erdogan and Meloni will discuss bilateral relations, the war in Ukraine, and the situation in the Middle East before the summit. They say the aim is to strengthen the cooperation and strategic partnership between the two nations and foster economic and trade relations that have grown significantly in recent years. It could be recalled that the first Intergovernmental Summit was held in 2008 in Turkey's Izmir, and the last one was held in the capital of Ankara 3 years ago. The summit will be followed by a forum with participation from both countries' business communities. Hassan Kabir reporting for Global TV.
Well, thank you so very much, Kabir. The opposition United National Congress, UNC, has secured a sweeping victory in Trinidad and Tobago's parliamentary elections, positioning party leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar to return as Prime Minister. Persad-Bissessar of the 30 celebrated the UNC's comeback at party headquarters in Chaguanas, dressed in the party's signature yellow and flanked by jubilant supporters. Her win marks a dramatic political return after 2 consecutive election losses to the incumbent People's National Movement. She declared, addressing a crowd of cheering UNC loyalists, saying, "When the party wins, everybody wins." And now let's go win in sports. Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma has received the Unity Torch ahead of the 2025 National Sports Festival set to hold in Ogun State. The governor praised the National Sports Commission for its organization and described sports as a key tool for promoting unity across the country.
The national leader, and is now coming to His Excellency.
I use this opportunity to encourage all our participants to go all out there with determination and bring medals. Medals that will represent the excellent status of our district. So you go.
Governor Uzodinma also charged Imo State contingent to compete with excellence and assured them of the full support of the government and people of the state. Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun has commended the commitment and determination of Remo Stars Football Club, which culminated in the team winning its first ever Nigeria Professional Football League title. The governor described the achievements as an unprecedented feat in the annals of the state. It was reported that Remo Stars claimed the NPFL title with a 1-0 victory over Nigeria Tornadoes. It has been reported that Wilfred Ndidi has a €9 million relegation release clause inserted in his Leicester City's contract. Ndidi penned a new 3-year contract with the Foxes last summer. The clause was activated when Leicester City were relegated to the Sky Bet Championship 2 weeks ago following a 1-0 loss to newly crowned champions Liverpool. And that's all we have for you here on the Global AM News. Thank you so very much for watching. But just before we go, we'd like to remind you that we're on DSTV channel 365 and Star Times 276. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms using @Global TV NG and other handles as you now see on your screen. Remember to download the Global TV Nigeria mobile app for Android and iOS devices so you can keep track of our 247 broadcast. The rest of Global Morning with yours sincerely and Godwin Sunday returns shortly. morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews and latest news with experts on key global issues,
and at the same time keeping you well informed about important events, both national and international.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed.
Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
dispersing upkeep of 20,000 naira.
Know that you cannot talk about a healthy nation if you don't have means to produce your own in addition to importing.
The CG is the principal actor of this because it's within her jurisdiction. Minister is a supervisor.
We must run in accordance with the Constitution of CAN, where you have just a single time.
The human factor, you have the infrastructural factor, then you have the mechanical factors.
The Senate, with all due respect, the West.
All right, let's get our first conversation on the road. Quickly, it's been 80 years since the end of the Second World War, what some other persons would like to call World War II. I mean, we've counted several decades down the line. This is the turn of another millennium, a new century, but the impact and in the first instance, the factors that even gave rise to that war are still forming the crux of discourse across the world till tomorrow, especially for students of politics and international relations. But the question is, 8 decades down the line, has the world learned anything from that very gory event and the repercussions it has had on a global scale? What should we learn? How can we apply those lessons going forward? Especially when you look at the fact that there are people who are still saying that looking at the elements that led to that war in the first instance and some of the recent events we've seen across the world, there's a chance of a third world war. Well, others say it may not be a full-blown war. It may not be, war as we know it, all right? But the fact that you now have poverty on a scale that is very daunting, all right, across the world, including in Nigeria, for example, you now have challenges in terms of how governments make decisions, all right, financial challenges, issues around inflation, for example, and then with Donald Trump and his barrage of tariffs. I mean, you put all of this together, it becomes a potpourri of a lot of problems that some persons have said is probably worse than what would have been a full-blown Third World War. But what exactly are the issues? What should we understand by way of context and perspective as the world now commemorates the end of the Second World War, which actually, if you like, abolished the League of Nations and brought about the United Nations? My guest today is Global Television's in-house analyst, a respected, distinguished Professor Ibrahim Abubakar is our security and political analyst. Prof, again, good morning and welcome to the program.
Morning.
I want us to begin from first, what led to the Second World War? Because one would have thought after the First World War, I mean, never again, as the good book says, affliction will not arise a second time. But how did it happen that the world experienced a Second World War?
Well, from the propagandists, the Second World War came up because of the invasion of Poland by the German soldiers in 1939. But was it really because of the invasion, or it was a crisis of personalities? Was the war actually because the Germans invaded Poland? The answer is no. Because if Poland is a close-by country to Germany, what brought the rise of American, the involvement of the British and the rest? It was an interest. The power wave after Adolf Hitler took over governance in Germany in 1939, the speed wave he was making from 1933 when he took over to 1939 was like what magic is this young man performing? And this was not about magic. It was about an excess of work template that he has made over time. Remember that he was in the military during the First World War and become a political leader or one of the political leaders under the Nazi regime.
Right.
So that Nazi democratic movement from military transforming from the military to civil rule brought about a lot of popularity for him, who originally was born in Austria.
Not even in Germany.
Not even in Germany in 1889. So recognizing that he's a German, not an Austrian, biologically, and seeing what was happening in Germany brought him back to Germany in 1913. So the young man who was already 24 years coming back to his country was a force because he recognizes what his parents has told him. He recognizes the impact of what his people were going through and what he feel will liberate his people. So invading Poland was because the Polish people did not want to recognize Germany as a part and parcel of the German movement. That is the way it was. But because of the interest of the Britons, who now incorporated American and other nations into what was the invasion after the First World War, and addressing the problem of the First World War in that first 6 years of his regime, actually was the Britons were not comfortable. And they started a propaganda war against his regime. And that he never wanted to take lightly, because he has built Germany for the 6 years, and that 6 years was something that was like a revolution, an evolving revolution that brought the true meaning of Germany into the Germans. So that is just what happened.
And then
he never planned
a war. So that war was inadvertent to a large extent. But let's talk about how the war played out, really, because at some point it was not a case of you having nations across the world who either took sides in favor of Germany or against Germany, and they had those who wanted to be neutral. What were the factors that informed positions and alignments and realignments?
You should know that when today we speak about Germans, we just speak German as everybody speaks the German language. We forget that there is the Frisians, the Serbs, the Italians, the Greeks, the Russian. All of them are languages in Germany, the Turks. So when you come back to that, everybody wanted to play out a superiority power. So why must it be German that becomes the lingua franca? And you should know those who are speaking Italian language has a root in Italy and has a support force. Those who speak Greek should also want a support from Greece. And the then husband to the queen was also a Greek man. So these are the support base, these are the political triangles that was affecting the leadership of Adolf Hitler. So if you look at this support basis, you find out that the Italians are there, then the Turks were there. So the Russians were there. So it was a link of who do we support. Good enough, somebody like Horobek was a Russian German who was actually talking to the Russians, speaking to the Russians. Good enough, he was like an orator that was talking to the people, speaking to the minds of the people. What we don't understand here is that there's a difference between, a thin line difference between talking and speaking. So all what Adolf Hitler was doing was speaking to the minds of the people, not just talking. Because talks may not have some actions, an element of actions, but speak to the mind of the people, because that is what the people are going through. Most of the things we don't do here, or all other nations don't do, is we talk without speaking to people. So he speak to them and he took them as action plans.
So you're saying one of the things that did work for Adolf Hitler was not just that he was a phenomenal orator, he was persuasive.
Yes, that worked a lot for him because he was speaking, and it was the speaking did, and over years he was able to build what later become the German machines. Over years he was able to collapse communism and other factors that was weakening the German people, and was able to build capitalism, and that has worked for Germans up to tomorrow. So they call it the German machine because of what it has implanted in them. So if you look at the economy meltdown that raveled all over Europe the last time, it never affected the Germans. He never affected the Germans because he has made them become very good workaholic people who were looking inward than outward. If you go to Germany today, you will never know there is any minority tribes or majority tribe. Everybody is a German. Here we have tribes, but everybody is ready to express to himself that I am not this, because nobody has been able to speak the truth into our mindset.
But I mean, you were talking about Adolf Hitler now from a very sterling perspective. I mean, anybody listening to you talk about this will have a bit of admiration for Adolf Hitler. However, the reverse has always been the case. History paints him as, persona non grata, as someone, a despicable character. How do we strike a balance based on facts?
You should also know that history has never recognized heroes, mostly when those heroes are playing a part that stands over time. Though that has, I have said it here that there was a lot of propaganda. How many people did German colonize? How many nations in Nigeria, in Africa, that German colonized? So it is a small web of people against the whole world, and you cannot be a success builder when you also have fundamental hatred. If we come to, let me use a little of Nigeria as an example. If you come to Nigeria today and they are talking of looting, stealing or so, the first thing anybody will tell you is Abacha. But I can categorically tell you that Abacha never stole any Nigerian money.
So who did? All the things we hear about Abacha loot.
They know, because where you cannot penetrate somebody, you called the cat.
So you give the dog a bad name to hang it?
Yes. So that was what happened to Adolf Hitler. They know the speed the young man was going, he was going. It would be difficult for them to contain him. Remember, there were so many, if you have read the history very well, there are so many factors, like the talks were not even a factor to him. But the Italians, the Greeks, the Russians, who were minorities in Germany, were actually a lot of headache to him, including the Jews. So for him, if you hear a propaganda, you will hear a propaganda that over 6 million Jews were either murdered or killed.
That's in the Holocaust.
Yes. So, but what was the population, the entire population of Germany as at that time, that you think that 6 million Jews were actually?
So you are saying history has been distorted?
Yes, there was no 6 million Jews anywhere in Germany. Because as at today, I think the entire population of Germany is not up to.
But was there an annihilation at all, whether 6 million or less? Was there any sort of annihilation, masterminded by Adolf Hitler of the Jews?
Yeah, it's like when I'm talking to Nigeria sometimes and they tell me what could be the solution to the problem. I said we have to go back to the drawing board. But you actually want to solve Nigeria problem, there must be a revolution.
No, my question is, did Adolf Hitler not kill the Jews in numbers, whether 6 million or less?
The Jews, were they in support of the movement that the Nazi Democrats were giving? No. The Jews were either spies, they were all working against his government.
While in Germany.
So what would you do in such case where you have saboteurs among you? Even the fall of Germany in 1945 was also because of some of the Jews who were Germans too, like Dr. Orr, Dr. Oberg, Dr. Schulz, who were the scientists, among the scientists that discover or maybe design and develop what we call the atomic bomb. But also to frustrate the government of Adolf Hitler, took this blueprint to America. America was never the owners of atomic bomb. It was a German discovery.
Right.
So if you look at it, it's Schuyler, Dr. Orr, Dr. Oberg were actually betrayed that government. Where did these people come from? I think among them, apart from Schuyler, Dr. Schuyler, or Dr. Orr and Dr. Oberg were actually Jews. So you can see the massive betrayal from this class of people. It is already a case of coup. Remember that the same Adolf Hitler was incarcerated for planning to overthrow the government of Germany. In 1923, 1924, he was in prison. So if you look at those indices and what he went through to climb the ladder, the only thing that was in his mind was to build a unified nation, which of course he did. But people did not recognize his effort because there was Western propaganda. We in Africa and other nations, majority of the nation speaks English, and those who don't speak English speak either Italy, France, or Russia. So these were the problem he was facing. So it was a lone voice in the forest, or just a lone tree in the midst of other trees. I think most of those propaganda stepped from there. So nobody was looking at the ideology. They were not looking at what he was building. And if you are not looking at what one is building, you find that you are narrowed into a space. How many, you are a lone voice in the voices of billions. So what impact will you make? But the impact he has made was what makes the other components to feel threatened. Scientifically, technologically, administratively, management, and otherwise. And it has a fundamental wings of security, because the moment you captured the security sector, being a former officer of the German army, he has already gotten a clip to what to do, what it is, because he has a mission before he came from Austria back to his country, which could be his fatherland.
Now, incidentally, we won't be talking about the United Nations today if the Second World War had not ended. In fact, the United Nations follows the end of the Second World War, having abolished the League of Nations and all of that. Just let's talk about the United Nations for a minute. There are those who say that the United Nations has outlived its importance, its necessity, that in fact it is just there nominally now. It's not making any impact 80 years down the line. Do we still need United Nations today to, quote unquote, coordinate the affairs of the world?
That is where we are having it wrong. It's just like most of the time I used to talk when we have a lot of commissions in Nigeria that are called commission agents. That is how the United Nations is today. Because it is being controlled by America and Britain. So any other nation is significant.
Including Russia and China?
Yes, all of them are insignificant.
Even though they are in the Security Council?
Yes, they are insignificant. So the United Nations itself has actually outlived its importance and its significance. Unless we are going back to the drawing board to see how do we bring up an organization that has the interest of every other nation in its place. Remember that before now, we don't have anybody in Africa as a whole, as a continent, has no representative in the United Nations Security Council.
Right.
Which is, so if a whole continent has no representative in the United Nations Security Council, means that you are just a contributor, you are just a figure.
At least we have an observer status.
So, well, observer status does not permit you to vote.
Doesn't vote, right?
It does not permit you to become an executive member. You don't have any right.
So you're almost inconsequential.
So you are not. You are very, very consequential. Very, very. So many nations like that. How many representatives do we have in Asia? So you should know that the stronghold and the control of the United Nations Security Council are actually American and Europe. So any other nation is just insignificant.
Interesting. Let's take a break now quickly, because there's so much we need to talk about these developments. For example, as it stands today, what are some of the lessons we can take into our current reality to better our lives as nations across the world, at least beginning from Nigeria? And then second, you are asking yourself, do we still need to continue to talk about having a multilateral institution like the UN? Because like my guest professor has said this morning, there are people who have talked about how that the UN is only there at the behest of the United States and in part maybe a bit of Europe, but essentially in what way specifically does the UN serve the overall interest of African nations, or the global south as these countries are now called? We'll talk about that and more after this break. Please stay with us. So, Prof, I think we should start from this point. I mean, this second half of the conversation, right? The UN has several agencies dispersed across the world doing great work, as they say, all right, humanitarian and all of that. If we were to abolish the United Nations, for example, what becomes of these agencies of the UN, right? And then, of course, how does that impact the work they are doing? Look at Nigeria, for example. The UN has agencies right on the ground who are trying to attend to those who are being impacted adversely by Boko Haram insurgency and what have you. Are we taking that implication into consideration at all?
If you say the UN, has the UN ever given an account of their administration, their management, and give account to Nigeria and what we are contributing to the UN? And who are the funders of Boko Haram? Do I give you 5 naira behind and collect 100 naira outside? Does it make any sense? Why has the UN not say, how do we end the problems or the security challenges that Nigeria has? Does it take them anything to do that? Remember that most of the things we do here on the security space are laughable. Laughable in the sense that some of the security agencies will tell you that the bandits, the terrorists are people you cannot identify. But I think we went to Zimbabwe for the gorilla destin. We stopped it in Zimbabwe. We went to Liberia. We went to Sierra Leone.
Right. ECOMOG.
These are even places where we are not familiar with the terrain, and we try off a comeback. So what is wrong here? Where the people were the same people who were in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, were they visible? They are the same thing like the bad.
There are people who say that ECOMOG, like you mentioned, Liberia and Sierra Leone, for example, I mean, those were decades ago, essentially in the 90s, but now we're looking at sophisticated crimes, right? Does that not change the dynamics for the army and for the fights?
There is no dynamics that has changed so far. So if the criminals or the terrorists have changed dynamics, are you saying that the security system or the security web was all sleeping and sluggish at this time? They did not scale up. They did not improve. They are still stand still where they were. So everybody can take them at the mall. If you go back to the Nigerian Defense Academy, is it the same Nigerian Defense Academy in the 80s and 90s that the Nigerian Defense Academy is today? Remember, in the 80s, they only issued diploma. Now they issue degrees. So why didn't they stand still and issue diplomas up to today? So we shouldn't, when we are discussing on areas like this, we weren't having cyber security anywhere before. There's cyber security in NDA today.
As a course.
As a course. So they shouldn't limit us to that kind of discussions where we just brainstorm on things that we know are not true, because the institutions here that are training has add up. If you go to Oji River where they train the police detectives, it's not the same thing that it was earlier, that it is 30 something years ago. That is not the same thing. So if you go to the police detective college now, it is not the same thing that it was 30 something years ago that it is today. So people should not tell us that the criminals has up their game and the security service sector is still remaining in one point. It's not true. So what they have done, what magic did they perform in Liberia and Sierra Leone, in Zimbabwe and other places, Cambodia and the rest, that we cannot perform today? That is the question. And this is our country. We left here to Cambodia, and we did what we are supposed to do there. even when the terrain is not our terrain. We did the same thing in Zimbabwe. We went to Lebanon. So why are we still finding it difficult in our own terrain to get a solution to this issue? Why are we looking at UN? UN is reaping from what? So if they bring in one naira, they are only giving it as a humanitarian service to the people, but they are taking away 100 naira from us. We like it, we don't like it, but that is the truth. So who is gaining? And the same thing is they are using propaganda against us. It is like the situation is very overwhelming and it has no solution. Has the United Nations actually prefer any solution to our issue?
Do you think it's time countries began to take practical steps of, if you like, delisting themselves from the membership of the UN?
I don't see any reason why I should contribute to an organization that does not recognize me.
Should Nigeria leave the UN?
Very well. Very well. They are doing more disservice to us than service.
So Nigeria as a country will be better off without membership of the UN?
Even Africa will be better off.
I'm asking that question because we now have Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic that have left ECOWAS, and we've seen ECOWAS try to appeal to them to come back to the fold, which they have refused to do. As a matter of fact, in the case of Burkina Faso, we are now hearing that they are dropping French as lingua franca to pick Hausa instead. Should we use that model for UN membership as well?
That is what the Germans fight for. Today, it is very difficult for anybody to speak French, talks, SOP, Italian, Greek, and Russia as a language in Germany, because people like Adolf Hitler has stand on their feet and said we have to speak the German language. Yeah, we still look at it as which language should be chosen if this one will not bring trouble. So you find out the Yorubas, they said the Yoruba is a majority language. Some said Hausa is majority. Some said Igbo is majority. But I can categorically tell everybody that the Igbo as Igbo is not more than 6 local governments in the whole of the East.
All across the 5 states in the East?
Yes. And if you want to talk of Yoruba, Yoruba is not how many local governments that are pure Yorubas, from Ife to Ede down. An Ibadan man cannot tell me he's a Yoruba man. Neither will Ijebu man tell me he's a Yoruba man. So the whole of Ogun State are not Yoruba.
The entire Ogun State?
Yes, they are not Yorubas. Not coming to Ekiti or Ondo, or you come back again to even Oyo. Is it this Saka man that will not tell me that it's a Yoruba man or the Awori man? So you can't come back. If you come back, you find out that these languages, then you come to Hausa. We have the Hausa Bakwai and the Baza Bakwai. So if you come, you just have Daura, Castina, Futua, Zaria, Kano, Hadija, and Bauchi. And the Bauchi is even some very minor Maik place in Bauchi that are the Hausas. So if you go by that, you find out that the people we regard as majorities are actually minorities, because the Nupis from the north are more than the Hausas
in their numbers.
Yes. So we are the ones who are enslaving ourselves by saying this is a majority. To me, every tribe in Nigeria are minorities.
If the powers rested with you, what language as it stands today, given all of these elements you have enumerated, would you pick as the lingua franca?
Any language can be picked as a lingua franca, as far as that language is more fluent to people, will be more friendly to the people. To me, I don't care.
We don't have a blowback from the Britons.
No, you see, this language thing has affected us because the Britons, the Americans, the Canadians, all of them are holding grip on us because we speak English. The communication is in English. So, but when we change to a language that is ours, the respect comes back to us because we are developing our IQ with the language we know and understand. The science, the technology, everything that has to do with it comes from our own language. That's the part the Germans built. So you cannot say I am an Italian because Italian is part of the languages that were in Germany before, Russian and the rest. You have Greek, so you have the Turks. So the facial and the sobs were not familiar languages, but when they pick up the German language, these other languages have to respectfully collapse together. So it was difficult for the institutional bodies to come in, and that aggravated what becomes what it is. So the real industrial revolution in Germany came after Germans identified themselves that we are Germans and we are speaking German language.
Okay, so let's move further and talk about the elephant in the room. From what you know today, I mean, you are a researcher, you are a scholar, you are an academic, you are a political analyst. Do you think a third world war is imminent?
The third world war we are speaking about today is not the war that we are going to carry arms against each other.
It's a different kind of war.
It's a different kind of war. That is what people should understand. The war is what we are just saying now. If Nigerians can just recall themselves and said, okay, we have built a web, we have built a set, we have built this is our set of revolution. We are not going to speak English today as a nation, and the rest we are going to do this, we are going to do this is the dynamics, and everybody is going to have the impact on the system, and we speak to the minds of our people, and everybody take it from that point. It will now become, we will now become a centralized nation. So the revolution will now be, we are not depending on you, even if you have colonized us. We are ourselves. We are not owing anybody. We are not indebted in any way to you. So we are enslaved because we are indebted to them one way or the other. Not just only financially that you are indebted to somebody. All the installations we have in Nigeria are hooked to another nation. So you can't control your infrastructures because the infrastructures are hooked to another nation. So if you go now, you see that today we are talking of power, electricity, and the rest. The arm, when it was collapsed, I'm just making an example. When it was collapsed, we now have generation already sold out, distribution already sold out, and we have transmission, which was the government. Now, the same transmission now has been changed into two, which is why into two? Why? Of what significant? How will it improve anything in Nigeria? Nobody is asking questions. But if, and this other system in transmission, we have just one central control unit, which is in Osogbo. So why did you think that the security or our power system will not? Because it is injected to some foreign bodies. But when we take over and said, we don't need these foreign bodies. We can do it on our own. You will find out that our growth template will be faster and more better.
There are people who believe, again, we'll circle back to Adolf Hitler. There are people who believe that Donald Trump, who is now railing against the entire world on account of his bunch of tariffs, shares some very fundamental attributes with Adolf Hitler. They say, for example, Adolf Hitler was more result-oriented as against being systematic. They say that he was not bothered about being politically correct. He wanted to do what he thought was necessary at that time. What lessons can African leaders, presidents, heads of governments learn or take from Adolf Hitler to provide direction and leadership for their people in this critical time?
You should look at the trust. You can look at how he transisted from coming from Austria and coming back to Germany, which is his homeland, and the transition into his military, and from military back to civilian, and how he transformed the nation. These are the wonderful things he has done that the press refused to carry because of that propaganda. If you look at also Donald Trump is actually not, he's American by birth, we agree. But his parents, his father is a German, the mother is a Polish. So what Donald Trump is doing is that he's following some of the footsteps, if you say, of Adolf Hitler. So it is not about there was massacre or no, there was nothing like massacre. There is no way that somebody will plan against you or sell your information to another nation and you are going to take it just that way. So Donald Trump, knowing where he comes from, he needs changes, and the changes must be dynamics. Of course, he has a cabinet that may make it work for him or may mirror his directions, because he has some few years to go. This is not his first term, so he has served before and is serving the second thread of it. But if the cabinet allow him to execute what he's executing, he's trying to execute, and if the legislators will also give him the homework, he will be able to achieve much for America.
Okay, let's wrap it up, Prof. Well, I know this is not new to you. A lot of people believe that there's a new world order now playing out already, whether we want to admit it or not. Is that your position?
A new world order playing it out. That new world order, as you should, let me bring the new world order into play. The center of this new world order is actually African nation. Europe has overstretched itself. America has overstretched itself. So the new world order is supposed to be African and Asia. But why there is still foot dragging is because the superiority game is still playing on. And that would take a lot of time for us to identify that we have been living in ignorance and we are supposed to get out of the web of ignorance into the web of knowledge. So Africa has not been able to identify that they have all the potentials. They have everything that it takes to become the new world order, to stage the new world order. Why Europe has overplayed their own rules and they don't have all the potentials they have now is not up to 5%. Why we still have up to 95 to 97% of our potentials not tapped. But 95% of their potentials has actually been tapped. So they are struggling. And that struggling makes it more they are relying on Africa and Asia. So where do we fit in the new world order is we have to identify our vulnerability, our weakness, and build a stronghold from it. The stronghold also tests on our leadership. Are our leaders strong enough? Are they knowledgeable enough? Do they understand the temerity of leaderships or the dynamics of leadership? So most of the people we call leaders don't even know the dynamics of leadership. So they don't know where to head to as we speak.
All right, Prof, I'd like to say a big thank you to you. I was going to talk to you a bit more about these three nations in West Africa, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic, whether or not Nigeria should follow that model, because they're trying very hard to wean themselves away from the influence of France and all of that. But I'm sure this is a conversation we can have some other time. Thank you so very much, Prof.
Thank you very much.
Insights as usual.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we'll leave it here at this point, everyone. Well, the program continues. We'll see you again after this break. Global Morning is your top morning show here on Global Television.
We bring you fresh news updates daily while delving into a variety of current affairs and topics.
A Global Morning aims to deliver newspaper reviews, latest news with experts on key global issues,
and at the same time keeping you well informed about important events, both national and internationals.
Global Morning serves as a valuable source of information, helping viewers like you start your day well informed. Stay connected from Mondays to Sundays to a wide range of the latest news making rounds on Global Morning.
We're on the road to protest.
The president meets all of our demands.
This is Global Morning.
All right, so much on the program this morning. Quite frankly, finally, Godwin Sende, my colleague, is on the show. Good to see you.
Good morning.
All right, so I was talking with Professor Ibrahim Abubakar a while ago. We're just talking about the World War, how it all started, how it played out, the actors essentially behind it. Of course, as expected, Adolf Hitler was at the center of the whole conversation, right? And then what lessons can Nigeria learn from all that? And he mentioned some of those issues, the challenges, how we can continue to be self-reliant, so to speak. Of course, it's 2025. You can't take away the factor of globalization, but while you are globalizing, how much are you building internally so that other countries don't run you over or exploit you and things like that. But we also need to domesticate the conversation at this point. Port Harcourt is still in our face. While we're dealing with that, there's Asaba, as I would like to call it. I mean, the mass movement that we saw there on Monday with the vice president on the ground to receive those defectors. And it just gives you a reason to want to look at the state of the nation. Where exactly are we politically?
Well, let's take the conversation first from the 1939 to 1945 United Nations after the fall of the League of Nations.
Right.
From after the World War. That's why I think from First World War 1914 to 1919.
Right.
But looking at all of this. First, the issue around the United Nations organization. First, looking at the organ of the United Nations, from the General Assembly through to the Security Council to the Economic and Social Council and all other arm of them, all those special units. I was thinking at this point in time that even because we've come of age,
right,
that the United Nations should be able to expand its scope to ensure that 5 permanent members in the Security Council can be expanded to such a way that we have more numbers in that decision-making body. Probably we have, if you have 15 members, that's 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members. We can increase it to have at least 15 permanent members on that seat. Because we're not in the near war situation right now where we say, okay, we're maintaining the status quo. Because whether you like it or not, most of this France, Russia, China, Britain, US, they still play the big brother role because of the structure that we've put in place. So one would expect at this point that all of those if you like to call it, all those discrepancies that surrounds the Security Council should be pulled out so that we can have a more decent world. And again, the domestication and the adoption of members into the United Nations organization, which is primarily the responsibility of the General Assembly. So one will begin to ask, so everybody that wants to be adopted into the United Nations as it stands right now will have to wait till September when they have their General Assembly meeting before you can be adopted. I think we can do better as a world, especially within the human rights and purview, looking at the Magna Carta of 1215, the Magna Carta of 1215, and other domestication of the human rights, fundamental human rights, as is enshrined even in the Atlantic Charters and all of those charters that form part of the base of the United Nations organization. But we can do better looking at all of this. For example, most countries are still practicing like what we saw happen in Nigeria just a couple of days ago, where we have a situation where the late Osinachi, the Nigerian singer, her husband, was sentenced to death by hanging. And one would ask at this point, going by the Criminal Code of Nigeria, Section 315 of the Criminal Code, running down to Section 316, Section 317, which we talked about murder and manslaughter. All of those sections in the Nigerian Constitution, doesn't it contravene the rights, the fundamental human right as enshrined in Section 33 of the Nigerian Constitution,
to which Nigeria is a signatory.
It's a signatory to the United Nations.
So how do you resolve that conflict?
All of this, it brings us back to that point where there is no uniformity in terms of the implementation of the various laws as proposed by the United Nations organization. For one, I will ask, are we sure that the United Nations has not outlived stay or its value, as it were. But people would disagree with me that no, we need to maintain the status quo. We need to maintain the balance in order for the world. But then, in the words of Fela and Nicola Kuti, if we go by that, let me not go because it sounds very, very, very funny. But then let's leave that. Let's come back to let's domesticate the conversation, like you've said before, and looking at the Asaba convergence. Now, I was looking at the defection and listening to Okowa yesterday, who was saying that Saraki does not have a moral standard
to criticize
him for over his defection, because for him Saraki is a chronic defector. He defects from one party to another, from the PDP to the APC, back to the PDP.
After all, how did he become the president of the Senate in the first instance?
So, looking at this, but on a critical, looking at it from the other side of the divide, one will begin to ask, why is Delta State moving to the People's and to the All Progressive Congress as it stands right now? Why? In terms of achievement, Delta State have seen quite a number of achievements with the People's Democratic Party. We've not heard, at least it's not on public record, that Delta State at a point was I've not enjoyed PDP for the last in the last count of our democratic dispensation. We can't say for sure. So if the governor of Delta State or wherever is leaving the party, we should have more cogent reason, more elaborate conversation on why are you even defecting. Now, if Okowa right now is, people will say that because Okowa is under the watch list of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC. So, and if you move to the All Progressive Congress, automatically your sins are allegedly forgiven. But looking at all of this conversation, it's a sad one for the People Democratic Party. Of course, they've come out to tell us that there is no cause for alarm, there is no shaking. But rumor has it that Atiku also is planning to also leave the party, according to what Okowa said yesterday. That Atiku was briefed and with all the happenings in the party. And one begin to ask at this point, is this the end for the People's Democratic Party, or we should begin to live on the renewed hope agenda that PDP also will be renewed and their hope will come alive? But as it stands right now, apart from the few governors that the party have, and which we are not sure that Governor Umoino of Akwa Ibom State is not going to defect in the days ahead, because he has given all indications that he is giving the president a thumbs up, is supporting what the president is doing. Whether we like it or not, or say, okay, we want to tilt this towards political lines, that because of the development that the president has brought using the coastal roads in Akwa Ibom, Calabar coastal lines and all of this. But then if you look at it, he has come out not just once to talk about his support for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He has come out to thank President Bola Tinubu countless times. He has come out to give. The last one that broke the camel's back is when he said that the president should go for 8 years. That automatically this spells doom. It spells doom for the party, because PDP automatically won't have a candidate. They will have a candidate, but as far as Akwa Ibom State is concerned, which is one of the stronghold of the People's Democratic Party, what it implies is that the chances of having a presidential candidate win in Akwa Ibom State from the People's Democratic Party is going to be slim. Similar thing what we had in Rivers State, where Wike, the former state and Rivers State governor, was able to frustrate the People's Democratic Party chances of winning the presidential election. But all of a sudden we saw Fubara emerge as the victor in that election under the People's Democratic Party. How it happened, I don't know. So if similar thing is going to happen in Akwa Ibom State as it stands right now, we can't say for sure, because it's too early to draw conclusions on this matter. But then again, a lot of conversations keep begging for answers. We even at this point, looking at the fact that Delta State House of Assembly is still on the other side of the divide.
Right.
We've not heard members of the House of Assembly from Delta State coming out to say that, hey, we are also decamping, leaving the People's Democratic Party. So, as it stands right now, it's the governors and his cronies that have left the People's Democratic Party. Even as it stands again, the people of the Progressive Congress are not even happy because they are saying that
we are the legacy members.
Yeah, that they, of course,
what happens to us?
You're pushing us through a one-party state as it stands right now, which Nigeria doesn't have that capacity to run a one-party state. Looking at the various structures that forms a one-party state. The interesting part of democracy is that you have a structure from the branch through to the caucus, through to the cell, and through to the military. Looking at all of this structure, it makes democracy to be interesting. But imagine having a system where nobody can criticize anybody. So anything is allowed to go. It becomes like a kangaroo republic where anything goes in that instant. We hope that we won't get to that point where we won't be able to have strong political will and strong political parties to be able to speak up to power and ensure that we create a balance in our democratical setting. Because if that happens, if we get to this point where one party state begins to become the order of the day, then one can't say for sure if Nigerian will be able to live to that point, because already we have been confronted with ethnicism, we've been confronted with tribalism, we have been confronted with a lot of religious sentiment. So imagine all of this now being fused up into a one-party state. It will speak well for our democracy, looking at it from the generality of it. If we want to be factual and be truthful to ourselves, one-party state won't be a welcome development for Nigeria.
You know, the whole time you were talking, Godwin, I had to practically fight back I had to fight to hold back my smile, especially when you started with the issue in Asaba, the defection and all of that. But let's put the record straight real quick, right? When you look at those criticizing former governor Ifeanyi Okowa, himself a former senator before becoming a governor, for example, the good book says, he who is without sin should cast the first stone. Atiku Abubakar has decamped more than any of these gentlemen. I mean, the records are there, all right? Since the days he was vice president with former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, again, like I said, the records are there. Saraki himself in 2015, just about, virtually a decade ago, had to decamp to the APC to become the president of the Senate. And we saw how he was an APC member. Regardless of whether people are saying that he wasn't a committed member, he wasn't dedicated, it was his body that was there, his spirit wasn't there. It doesn't make any difference. You were there. In fact, it was under Saraki that we had things like the new PDP, NPDP, if you remember, just a few years ago. I think politicians take citizens for granted too much. They think people are dumb, so they don't remember these things, maybe. So, like Okowa said, Mr. Saraki and former VP Atiku do not have the moral justification to criticize him for the campaign. So, even if you want to come with, the strand of, you are decamping at a time, who is talking timing? Politicians really do not give a broomstick about those things. They defect when it serves their overall interests. Yeah. And it's also laughable when you hear somebody like Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, a former two-term governor, tell you that, the reason we are decamping to the APC is so we are able to connect to Delta State. So somebody at about dinner time yesterday asked a question. I thought Mr. Ifeanyi Okowa is a medical doctor. When did he become a civil engineer connecting Delta and Abuja by bridge? Why did he do this connection the whole time he was governor, or even before that while he was president? But again, this is politics we are looking at. Yesterday, Okowa was on national television. He talked about a lot of things. He even said, look, for those of you saying Mr. Atiku Abubakar will not be very impressed with my defection, you don't even know what is coming. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar is going to also move from the PDP. Of course, the former Vice President has come out to say that he bears no grudge against Okowa, he doesn't want to move. But you see, politicians speak from both sides of the mouth. So we'll wait to see what happens in that regard. But you asked a very salient question a while ago. Is this the end of the PDP as we know it? I think this is the beginning of the end of the PDP as we know it. And I'll tell you why. The PDP as of today, I mean, you can go fact check it. It's made up of two classes of people. There are those who believe PDP or nothing. As far as Nigerian politics is concerned, it is PDP or nothing. So they remain in PDP until there's nothing to stand for anymore. But there are those who are there with one leg and telling themselves, look, I don't believe in this party anymore. This party is not going to work. It's headed for the rocks. So let's just wait until such a time when it becomes convenient for us to move. Because let's be clear, for everybody who defects, I mean, it takes a lot for the number 2 citizen of the country, the person of Vice President Kashif Shettima, to fly into Asaba to receive these decampees or defectors. Now, we need to be very clear about the fact that each of these defectors has followers.
Yeah.
Okowa is influential in Delta. You can't take that away. Or is it the governor who by now has become the de facto leader of the APC, which was a concern people also expressed, because they said you have someone like Oviomo Agege, former deputy senate president, who before now was the leader of the APC, even though there was a fight too between him and the current Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Kayamo SAN, as to who is the leader between both of them. But there are concerns too as to what happens to the leadership structure of the APC in the states, because the dynamics have changed fundamentally. And someone told me when I also posed this question that, look, by default, Right Honorable Sheriff Oboriwori, the governor, is not the leader of the party. It's not about who likes it and who doesn't like it. It's the way he works, because there has to be structure to be able to lead the party even beyond 2027. Now, on the final note, there's the, theory that Mr. Efai Okowa is the one who has masterminded, in fact, initiated and masterminded this defection, regardless of the number of people involved, because he wants to also get stuff landing, the kind of model that, people like the current president of the Senate used when his own sins were forgiven, and then who says Mr. Okowa can also seek forgiveness, looking at the fact that the APC has a big heart and will continue to forgive for God knows how long. But again, these are all still in the realm of theorizing. However, the last question, how does this serve the interest of the everyday Nigerian? I put that in front of you.
What an interesting question to ask. But looking at Delta State and trying to assess most of the APC dominating states, using Cross River State, when Ayade moved from PDP, People's Democratic Party, to the All Progressive Congress, the question is, what was the impact of Ayade's government to every Cross Riverian as it stands? Even most Cross Riverians would tell you that they didn't really feel the impact of Ayade's government. It moved to it moved from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressive Congress to connect with Abuja, as put rightly by Okowa. Ayade was connected to Buhari in Abuja. What was the impact? First question to ask. Again, we'll look at states, APC dominating states. Take a look around. We'll ask the everyday Nigerian, how happy are they with some of the policies that has been brought forth by the All Progressive Congress so far? I told somebody as a joke, I said, it's only the People's Democratic Party that can fix Abuja. Strangely as it sounded, it's only the People's Democratic Party that can fix Abuja.
Why is that?
Okay, I don't, for whatever reason, you can take out the fact that the People's Democratic Party, they have their own challenge, but when it has to do with innovation and infrastructural development, to a very large extent, most of the PDP governors have foresights.
By talking about innovation and infrastructure, for example, won't you say that Mr. Nyesom Wike is doing that very well under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu and APC president?
Well, you can't rule out the fact that Nyesom Wike has not come out to say
he has decamped from the PDP.
Come from the People's Democratic Party. As a matter of fact, he still has a court injunction
stopping him from the
stopping him from the campaign and stopping anybody from the party from expelling him from the party. So he's still a bona fide fidel member of the People's Democratic Party, spirit, soul, and body. So who is fixing Abuja? Nyesom Wike. Which political party? The People's Democratic Party. For 8 years we saw President Muhammadu Buhari and saw what Abuja was like for 8 years. We had an instance where the FCT minister, I don't want to mention name, will even refund money that there's nothing to do
with the money,
in the Federal Capital Territory. But we saw what Wike has done for in the last 2 years. You can't rule out the fact that Wike is a performer. You can't rule out the fact that Umahi, who was the former governor of Ebonyi State,
who also moved from the PDP to the APC.
Democratic Party to the APC. You can't rule out the fact that Umahi is a performer.
So is it about partisan affiliation?
I don't know what this is for politicians. Sincerely, I've been trying to wrap my head around it to know what this is. But like I said before, PDP governors might not be the best. Of course, they have their own challenges. But then we can't rule out the fact that Seyi Makinde has been a performer. Apart from the governor, Sanwo-Olu, executive governor of Lagos State, I think we can literally not compare any state governor in the West with Seyi Makinde, literally. Because he has vision, he has foresight. Same thing what you see with Adeleke. Vision, foresight. They're always thinking ahead. Most PDP governors are like that. But some people say that it's in their first tenure. They're always very proactive. But thereafter, they look the other way and smile to the bank. I don't know how correct that is. But looking at all of this, if we bring back Delta State, look at the kind of infrastructure they've enjoyed. Then compare that with when Umahi moved from APC, from the People's Democratic Party to the APC. Compare it to where the likes of Ayadi moved from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressive Congress. What level of development were they able to attract to the likes of Cross River State and Ebonyi State? Now, putting all of this together and returning back to the question, one will begin to look at when two elephants fight, the grass will definitely suffer. In this case, the citizens will be able to speak through their PVCs if at all they will be enjoying. They've been able to enjoy some of the privileges that will be brought to them, because Delta State is an oil-rich state. Internally generated revenue alone. If not that we want to, I don't know what Okowa meant by we want to be connected to the center. I want to be connected to Abuja. I don't know what he meant by that. But going by the tax reforms that is being initiated, I don't know why it's taking the National Assembly to pass that law. They said before, after Easter, they will pass that. But of course, they will be resuming by May the 6th. So we'll see how that plays out. But looking at all of the tax reforms that is being initiated and introduced by the president, it would mean that every state will have to generate its own money, its own revenue. You spend what you generate. Now, in that case, what use is the device connecting to Abuja going to do for the good people of Delta State? Doesn't this again tell us that most DKMPs are just lazy politicians that want to take us back to that state of unitary system masking federalism? Because as it stands right now, it looks like a unitary system. You want to be connected to the federal government, the government at the center. Meanwhile, we have a system of government where we have it's totally broken down into 3 tiers, from the federal government to the state and through to the local government. And these 3 tiers of government, by the constitution, provision of the constitution, enjoy similar power sharing formulas
at their levels.
From the exclusive legislative list through to the concurrent list and down to the residual list. You see, looking at all of this, putting them together, I'm trying to wrap my head around what Okowa. I listened to him yesterday and I was wondering what's going on. Is this not another way of bringing the people, making the masses of good people of Delta State to begin to rely solely on the federal government again? How many factories are there in Delta State as it stands right now? How many factories are proposed in Delta State? How many companies are we attracting in terms of investment to Delta State? This should be the conversation as against who is the company or who is not. Because if people of Delta State are not having jobs, if people of Delta State are not being productive, if people of Delta State are not looking at it, are not economically empowered, the whole connecting to the center will become another exercise.
I agree with you, though, but then we need to wait until the connection process completes, right? It needs to go full cycle. Yeah. But just to add to this, I think it's only fair that we also reference the conversation that Hakim Baba Ahmed, former special advisor to the president in the office of the vice president, had on television just a few days ago. What he talked about, he clearly said, you have between 2,000 and 3,000 politicians. We're wrapping up now, all right? Actually leading over 200 million people. He said these politicians have just one thing in common: selfish interest. And then he goes ahead to say that these politicians don't like themselves. There's no love lost amongst them, but then they have to do the same thing just to stay in power, stay close to power, stay protected, and continue to milk the country. But what more can we say? That's what we're going to leave the conversation this morning.
It is what it is.
It is, of course.
It is what it is as it stands right now.
All right, everyone, we'd like to say a big thank you to you for watching Global Morning this midweek. Just also to remind you that the views of our guests across all of our programs are their opinions. My colleague Godwin Sunday and I are grateful for the time you've invested with us here today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Welcome to Global Morning.
Death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too. For sure.
If you don't say we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they take permission from the
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle with the ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a life. The president never gave me any deadline.